Emily lived a quiet life in Charleston, South Carolina, where the historic charm of the city mirrored the steady rhythm of her days. She worked at a quaint cafe nestled on a cobblestone street, serving aromatic coffee to regulars and tourists alike. Despite the picturesque setting, Emily often felt a sense of longing, an unspoken desire for something more profound to stir her heart. One crisp autumn morning, as Emily sorted through her mail, a peculiar envelope caught her eye. It was unlike any other, with its creamy texture and elegant handwriting. She carefully opened it, revealing a letter penned in an exquisite, flowing script. To the enchanting Emily, it began, "Though we have yet to meet, I find myself captivated by your grace and beauty. Your presence lingers in my mind like a melody I cannot forget. Until the day we meet, know that you are cherished from afar." Emily's heart raced as she read the passionate words. She turned the envelope over, searching for a clue to the sender's identity, but there was none. The letter was unsigned, adding to the mystery. Intrigued, she tucked the letter away, wondering who could have written such heartfelt words. Later that evening, Emily met her best friend, Sophie, at a cozy bistro. Sophie was a vibrant woman, full of life and energy, but lately, there was a shadow of concern in her eyes, a reflection of the troubles brewing in her marriage. "Emily, you look like you've seen a ghost," Sophie remarked, noticing her friend's distracted demeanor. Emily pulled the letter from her bag and handed it to Sophie. "I received this today. There's no name, no return address. Just these beautiful words." Sophie's eyes widened as she read the letter. "This is incredible. Someone out there is head over heels for you. We have to find out who it is." Emily sighed. "But how? I don't even know where to start." Sophie leaned in, her expression determined. "We can start by keeping an eye out for any clues. Maybe the letters will reveal something over time. And who knows, maybe this mystery admirer will find a way to reveal himself." As days turned into weeks, Emily received more letters, each one more ardent and poetic than the last. She read them in the quiet moments of her day, feeling a connection to the mysterious writer. Sophie continued to encourage her, even as she dealt with her own struggles at home. One evening, after a particularly heated argument with her husband, Sophie confided in Emily. "I envy you, you know. These letters, they remind me of the passion my husband and I once shared. Maybe it's not too late for us to find it again." Emily squeezed her friend's hand. "You and Mark have a strong foundation. You'll find your way back to each other. Sometimes, we just need a reminder of what brought us together in the first place." Meanwhile, across the ocean, Jake, a dedicated sailor, poured his heart into each letter he sent to Emily. He had seen her only briefly at the cafe, but that fleeting encounter had left an indelible mark on his soul. He wrote to her from the far corners of the world, his words a lifeline to the memory of her smile. Jake's brother, Tom, was also grappling with his own demons. A talented photographer, Tom had been struggling with depression, finding it increasingly difficult to see beauty in the world around him. One day, inspired by his brother's passionate letters, Tom decided to embark on a new project, capturing the lives of sailors and their families. He hoped this endeavor would rekindle his creative spirit and help him find a sense of purpose. Tom's project began to take shape as he photographed sailors preparing for voyages, their loved ones waving goodbye, and the poignant moments of reunion. As he worked, he found himself drawn to the stories of these men and women, their sacrifices, and the love that sustained them through long separations. Back in Charleston, Emily continued to be enchanted by the letters. One particular letter stood out, describing in vivid detail a cafe that sounded remarkably like the one where she worked. The writer mentioned the smell of freshly brewed coffee, the sound of the bell above the door, and the way sunlight filtered through the windows in the afternoon. Emily showed the letter to Sophie. "This has to be a clue. He knows this place, Sophie. He's been here." Sophie nodded, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "You have to find out who he is, Emily. This is your chance." Determined to uncover the identity of her secret admirer, Emily began to ask around discreetly. She inquired with her co-workers and regular customers, hoping someone might have seen a man lingering with a note of admiration in his eyes. Her search led her to the realization that love can often be hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. As Tom immersed himself in his photography, he found solace in the stories of resilience and devotion. His lens captured moments of raw emotion, and through his work, he began to heal. The project gave him a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper understanding of the bond he shared with his brother, Jake. Emily's journey to uncover the mystery of her admirer intertwined with the lives of those around her, creating a tapestry of love, friendship, and the unyielding human spirit. Little did she know that the answers she sought were closer than she imagined, waiting to be unveiled in the most unexpected ways. Emily continued to receive more love letters, each one more passionate than the last. The elegant handwriting and the heartfelt words began to feel strangely familiar, like a melody she had heard before but couldn't quite place. Each morning, she eagerly anticipated the arrival of the mail, her heart racing in excitement and curiosity. She spent countless evenings poring over the letters, trying to decipher any clues about the mysterious sender. The words resonated with her deeply, as if the author knew her soul, her dreams, and her fears. One evening, as she sat by the window, a gentle breeze ruffling the curtains, Emily held the latest letter in her hands. The moonlight cast a soft glow on the page, illuminating the delicate script. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had seen this handwriting somewhere before. She closed her eyes, letting the words wash over her, and a memory flickered at the edge of her consciousness. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, aboard a naval vessel, Jake sat in his cramped quarters, pen in hand. The gentle rocking of the ship was a familiar lullaby to him now. He leaned over the small desk, his face illuminated by the dim light of a single bulb. The letter before him was yet another missive to Emily, the woman who had never left his thoughts since that fleeting encounter at the cafe in Charleston. He poured his heart into every word, hoping that his feelings would reach her across the vast ocean. "Dear Emily," he wrote, his hand steady despite the ship's movements. "Every day, I find myself thinking of you, of that brief moment we shared. It was as if time stood still, and in that instant, I knew I had to know you, to understand the depths of your soul. I hope that these letters bring you some measure of the joy they bring me to write. Until we meet again, know that you are always in my heart." Jake sealed the letter with care, imagining Emily's reaction as she opened it. He could only hope that his words conveyed the depth of his feelings, that she would sense the sincerity and passion that had driven him to continue writing. Back in Charleston, Emily's curiosity had reached a tipping point. The letters were no longer just a delightful mystery. They had become a consuming quest. She decided to take a more proactive approach to solve the enigma. Armed with a collection of the letters, she began asking her neighbors and colleagues at the cafe if they recognized the handwriting or had any information about the sender. One afternoon, she approached Mrs. Jenkins, her elderly neighbor who had lived in the neighborhood for decades. Mrs. Jenkins was known for her keen eye and sharp memory. "Mrs. Jenkins," Emily began hesitantly, "I've been receiving these letters, and I was wondering if you might recognize the handwriting or know who could be sending them." Mrs. Jenkins adjusted her glasses and took the letter from Emily's hands, scrutinizing it closely. "My dear, this handwriting does seem familiar, but I can't quite place it. Have you checked with the post office? Sometimes they can give you a clue about where the letters are being mailed from." Emily nodded, grateful for the suggestion. "Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins. I'll definitely look into that." Her next stop was the cafe, where she worked. She approached her colleagues, hoping someone would recognize the script. As she showed the letters to her friend and co-worker, Lily, a flicker of recognition crossed her friend's face. "Emily, this handwriting. It reminds me of someone who used to come to the cafe a while back. I can't remember his name, but he was a sailor, I think. He only came in a few times, but he always wrote in a journal with this same elegant script." Emily's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that the author of the letters was someone she had encountered at the cafe? The pieces of the puzzle were slowly falling into place, but there were still many unanswered questions. Determined to find out more, Emily decided to visit the post office, as Mrs. Jenkins had suggested. The postmaster, Mr. Harris, was a kind man who had known Emily since she was a child. She explained her situation, hoping he might offer some insight. "Mr. Harris, I've been receiving these letters, and I was wondering if you could tell me anything about where they're coming from," she said, handing him one of the envelopes. Mr. Harris examined the envelope thoughtfully. "Well, Emily, I can tell you that these letters are being mailed from different locations, mostly from ports along the East Coast. It seems like the sender is someone who travels frequently." Emily's mind raced. A sailor who traveled frequently and who wrote in a familiar script. The clues pointed towards someone like Jake, but she couldn't be certain. As she left the post office, Emily's thoughts were a whirlwind of possibilities. She needed to dig deeper, to find more concrete evidence that would lead her to the truth. The letters had become a lifeline, a connection to a stranger who seemed to know her better than anyone else. She was determined to uncover the identity of the mysterious writer, no matter what it took. Across the ocean, Jake continued to write, each letter a testament to his unwavering affection for Emily. He hoped that one day they would meet again, and that the words he had written would bridge the distance between their hearts. Emily had been receiving the mysterious love letters for almost a year when she finally stumbled upon a crucial clue. One of the letters described, in vivid detail, a small cafe in Charleston where she worked as a barista. The letter spoke of the cafe's cozy ambience, the smell of freshly brewed coffee, and the soft jazz music that played in the background. But what struck her the most was the mention of a brief encounter with a woman who had captivated the author's heart. This woman, she realized with a jolt, was herself. Sitting at her kitchen table, Emily reread the letter for the umpteenth time, her fingers tracing the elegant script. "The way you smiled as you handed me my coffee. I knew then that I had to know you," the letter read. She could almost see the scene unfolding before her eyes, a fleeting moment that had left such a profound impact on someone she couldn't even remember noticing. "Sophie, you have to see this," Emily said, her voice tinged with excitement and confusion as she called her best friend on the phone. Sophie, who had been a constant source of support and encouragement throughout this mysterious journey, arrived at Emily's house within minutes. After reading the letter, Sophie looked up at Emily, her eyes wide. "This is incredible, Emily. He must have been there, at the cafe. Maybe he was just a customer you didn't notice," she suggested, her mind already working on possible scenarios. Emily nodded, her thoughts racing. "But why didn't he just approach me then? Why all the secrecy with the letters?" Sophie pondered this for a moment. Maybe he was shy, or maybe he thought writing the letters would be more romantic. Either way, you have a lead now. You need to find out more about him, and the cafe might be the key. As Emily mulled over Sophie's words, she couldn't help but think about her friend's situation. Sophie had been struggling with her marriage, and the letters had become a welcome distraction for both of them. "How are things with you and Mark?" Emily asked gently, changing the subject. Sophie sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "It's tough, Emily. We're trying, but it's like we're speaking different languages sometimes. These letters, they've made me realize how much I miss the romance, the connection we used to have." Emily reached out and squeezed Sophie's hand. "You'll get through this, Sophie. You and Mark have a strong foundation. Maybe you can find inspiration in these letters, in the love that's so clearly expressed in them." Sophie smiled weakly. "I hope so. But right now, let's focus on solving your mystery. Maybe it'll give me the courage to face my own issues head-on." Meanwhile, miles away on a naval ship, Jake sat in his small cabin, penning another letter to Emily. He had been on a mission for the past few months, and writing to her had become his solace, a way to keep his heart tethered to hers. He poured his feelings onto the paper, describing the loneliness of the sea and his longing to see her again. "I don't know if you'll ever read these words," he wrote, "but they are my truth. You are my beacon, my hope. I dream of the day we can meet again." Back in Charleston, Emily decided to take action. Armed with the new clue, she began asking her colleagues and regular customers at the cafe if they remembered anyone who might fit the description of her mysterious letter writer. She described him as best as she could from the few details she had gleaned from the letters. One afternoon, as she was cleaning tables, an older man named Mr. Thompson, a regular at the cafe, approached her. "I couldn't help but overhear your questions," he said kindly. "I think I might know who you're looking for. There was a young sailor who used to come in here about a year ago. He always sat by the window, watching the world go by. He seemed like a thoughtful young man. Emily's heart raced. Do you remember his name? Mr. Thompson shook his head. I'm afraid not. But he did mention once that he was shipping out soon. Maybe he's in the Navy? With this new piece of information, Emily felt a renewed sense of determination. She shared the news with Sophie, who was equally excited. This is it, Emily. You're getting closer. Maybe you can contact the Navy, see if they can help you find him. As Emily continued her search, Sophie found herself reflecting more and more on her own life. The letters had stirred something in her, a longing for the passion and connection she once shared with her husband, Mark. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, she sat down with Mark and shared her feelings. Mark, we need to talk. I miss us, the way we used to be. Mark looked at her, his expression softening. I miss us too, Sophie. Let's work on this together. We can find our way back. Meanwhile, Tom, Jake's brother, had found a new sense of purpose in his photography project. Documenting the lives of sailors and their families had opened his eyes to the deep connections and sacrifices made by those who served. He found himself pouring his heart into his work, capturing moments of love, longing, and hope. One day, while reviewing his latest photographs, Tom came across a picture of Jake, taken just before he had left for his mission. Jake's expression was one of quiet determination, and Tom felt a pang of pride and sorrow. He knew his brother was out there, writing to the woman he loved, and it gave him a sense of connection and purpose. As Emily pieced together more clues, she felt a growing sense of anticipation. She was getting closer to uncovering the identity of her mysterious admirer. And with each step, she found herself more deeply intertwined with the lives of those around her, from Sophie's marital struggles to Tom's journey through his own personal battles. The letters, it seemed, were not just a love story between Emily and Jake. They were a thread that connected so many lives, weaving a tapestry of hope, love, and courage. And as Emily moved closer to solving the mystery, she knew that her life, and the lives of those around her, would never be the same. Emily sat at her small wooden desk, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nervousness. She clutched the latest letter from Jake, the mysterious sailor who had been sending her love notes for the past year. The letters had become a lifeline, a source of joy and curiosity that brightened her days in ways she never anticipated. But today was different. Today, she had finally pieced together the puzzle and discovered Jake's identity. The revelation had left her breathless, and now she was preparing to write her own letter in response. As she dipped her pen into the ink, her thoughts wandered back to the moment she found the clue that led her to Jake. It was a detailed description of the cozy cafe in Charleston where she worked, a place where she had seen countless faces, but none that stood out until now. The realization that Jake had been there, that he had seen her and been inspired to write such heartfelt letters, was both thrilling and overwhelming. Dear Jake, she began, her hand trembling slightly as she wrote, I cannot express how much your letters have meant to me. They have been a source of comfort and joy, especially during times when I felt alone. It amazes me to think that you saw me at the cafe, and that moment sparked such beautiful words. I would love to know more about you and share my own thoughts and feelings. I hope this letter finds you well and brings you as much happiness as your letters have brought me. With all my heart, Emily. She sealed the letter with a kiss and carefully placed it in an envelope, addressing it to the mysterious return address she had finally identified. As she walked to the mailbox, her mind raced with possibilities. What kind of person was Jake? What had driven him to write to her? And most importantly, what would he think of her response? Halfway across the world, Jake was aboard his naval ship, enduring the monotony of another long mission. The sea stretched endlessly around him, a vast expanse that mirrored the distance he felt from Emily. He had never expected her to respond, had never dared to hope that his letters would reach her heart. But when he received her letter, it was as if the sun had broken through the clouds, illuminating his world with unexpected brightness. Jake, you've got mail, a fellow sailor called out, handing him the envelope. Jake's hands shook as he opened it, his eyes scanning the familiar handwriting. As he read her words, a wide smile spread across his face, and he felt a warmth he hadn't felt in years. Hey, "What's got you grinning like that?" his friend asked, peeking over his shoulder. "It's from her," Jake replied, his voice filled with awe. She wrote back. Over the next few weeks, Emily and Jake began to exchange letters regularly. Each envelope was filled with shared dreams, personal anecdotes, and budding affection. Despite the physical distance, their emotional connection deepened with every word. One evening, Emily sat at her desk, rereading Jake's latest letter. He had written about his childhood, his love for the sea, and his longing to see her again. "Emily," he wrote, "I never imagined that a brief encounter in a cafe could lead to something so profound. Your letters are my anchor, keeping me grounded amidst the chaos of my life at sea. I dream of the day when I can see you again, when we can sit together and talk about everything and nothing. Until then, know that you are always in my thoughts." Emily felt a tear roll down her cheek as she read his words. She had always believed in serendipity, in the idea that fate had a hand in bringing people together, and now she was living proof of that belief. Meanwhile, Jake found solace in Emily's letters, each one a beacon of hope amidst the challenges of his missions. He would read her words under the dim light of his cabin, feeling a sense of peace that eluded him in the harsh environment of naval life. One day, while reading one of Emily's letters, Jake was interrupted by his brother Tom, who had come to visit him on the ship. Tom, a talented photographer, had been working on a project documenting the lives of sailors and their families. "Jake, have you ever thought about what you'll do when you get back?" Tom asked, setting up his camera. "All the time," Jake replied, his thoughts drifting to Emily. "I want to see her, Tom. The woman I've been writing to. I need to meet her." Tom looked at his brother, seeing the determination in his eyes. "You will, Jake. And when you do, it's going to be everything you dreamed of." Back in Charleston, Emily shared her excitement with Sophie, her best friend who had been dealing with her own marital struggles. "Emily, this is incredible," Sophie said, her eyes shining with genuine happiness. "You found something so rare and beautiful. It gives me hope." Emily smiled, feeling grateful for Sophie's support. "I just can't wait to meet him, Sophie, to finally put a face to the words that have meant so much to me." As the days turned into weeks, Emily and Jake's letters continued to flow, each one bringing them closer together. They shared their hopes and fears, their pasts and dreams for the future. And with every letter, the bond between them grew stronger, transcending the miles that separated them. Their love story, born from a chance encounter and nurtured through heartfelt words, was a testament to the power of connection and the magic of destiny. And as they navigated their respective worlds, they held onto the promise of a future where they could finally be together, knowing that their hearts had already found a home in each other. Sophie had spent countless nights lying awake, contemplating the state of her marriage. The once vibrant connection with her husband had faded into a shadow of its former self, replaced by silence and unspoken resentments. The letters Emily received from Jake had sparked something within Sophie, a longing to reclaim the passion she once shared with her partner. Inspired by Emily's courage to pursue the mysterious author of those beautifully penned letters, Sophie decided it was time to confront her own issues head-on. One evening, after dinner, Sophie sat across from her husband, Michael, at their kitchen table. The room was dimly lit, casting soft shadows on their faces. She took a deep breath and began. "Michael, we need to talk," Sophie said, her voice steady but filled with a mixture of determination and vulnerability. Michael looked up from his plate, sensing the gravity in her tone. "What's on your mind, Soph?" "It's about us. Our marriage. I feel like we've been drifting apart, and I can't ignore it anymore. I want us to be happy again, to find that connection we used to have." Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know things have been tough. Work's been stressful, and I guess I've been distant. But I love you, Sophie. I never stopped." Sophie reached out, taking his hand in hers. "I love you too, Michael. And that's why we need to work on this together. Let's not let the silence and the distance win." Meanwhile, Emily, fueled by the encouraging words from Jake's letters, decided to take a bold step in her own life. For years, she had nurtured a passion for painting, but fear and self-doubt had always held her back from sharing her work with the world. The love and support she felt through Jake's letters gave her the courage she needed to finally showcase her talent. One afternoon, Emily stood in her small art studio, surrounded by canvases filled with vibrant colors and expressive brushstrokes. She carefully selected her favorite pieces, each one telling a story of its own, and began to prepare them for her first-ever art exhibition. The prospect of revealing her art to the public was both thrilling and terrifying, but she knew it was time to take that leap of faith. Emily's best friend, Sophie, was there to support her every step of the way. As they mounted the paintings on the gallery walls, Sophie couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for Emily's bravery. "You know, Emily, seeing you chase your dreams like this makes me feel like I can do anything," Sophie confessed, a smile spreading across her face. Emily chuckled, adjusting a painting on the wall. "Well, it's about time we both started believing in ourselves, don't you think?" As the opening night of Emily's exhibition approached, Tom, Jake's brother, found himself deeply moved by the love story unfolding between Emily and Jake. Tom had been documenting the lives of sailors and their families for his photography project, and through his lens, he captured the raw emotions and profound connections that defined their world. One evening, as Tom sat in his dimly lit apartment, editing photos, he couldn't shake the feeling of inspiration that Emily and Jake's story had ignited within him. He decided to include their journey in his project, hoping their love would resonate with others, and perhaps even help him confront his own battles with depression. Tom visited Emily's studio the day before the exhibition, armed with his camera and a newfound sense of purpose. He observed Emily as she made final preparations, capturing candid moments that reflected her passion and dedication. "Emily, I have to say, your story with Jake has been incredibly inspiring," Tom said, lowering his camera and meeting her gaze. "It's given me a new perspective on my own life and work." Emily smiled warmly, feeling a sense of connection with Tom. "Thank you, Tom. That means a lot to me. I think we all have the power to inspire each other, even in the smallest ways." As the night of the exhibition arrived, the gallery buzzed with anticipation. Emily stood nervously at the entrance, greeting guests and thanking them for coming. Sophie and Michael arrived together, their hands intertwined, a sign of their renewed commitment to each other. The gallery was filled with friends, family, and art enthusiasts, all eager to see Emily's work. Each painting told a story, a glimpse into Emily's soul, and the love that had blossomed through Jake's letters. As the evening progressed, Emily felt a sense of accomplishment and fulfillment she had never experienced before. Tom's photographs were also displayed, capturing the essence of life at sea and the emotional bonds that tied sailors to their loved ones. Among the images were candid shots of Emily and Jake's letters, a testament to the power of love and connection. Later that night, as the gallery began to empty, Emily stood before her paintings, taking in the moment. Tom approached her, camera in hand, and smiled. "You did it, Emily. Your art is incredible, and your story has touched so many people," Tom said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. Emily turned to him, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "Thank you, Tom. I couldn't have done it without the support of everyone around me. And thank you for capturing our journey so beautifully." As Emily and Tom shared a moment of mutual respect and understanding, Sophie and Michael stood nearby, reflecting on their own journey. The strength and courage Emily had shown had inspired them to confront their issues and rebuild their marriage, and for that, they were eternally grateful. In the days that followed, the bonds between Emily, Jake, Sophie, Michael, and Tom grew even stronger. They had all faced their own struggles and fears, but through love, determination, and the power of connection, they had found hope and inspiration in each other's stories. Emily and Jake had been exchanging letters for months, and each one brought them closer together, despite the miles that separated them. The anticipation for Jake's return was palpable. Emily had spent countless hours imagining their first meeting and the conversations they would have. Her heart raced at the thought, her mind filled with the romantic words he had penned so carefully. One sunny afternoon, as Emily sat on her porch reading Jake's latest letter, she received the news she had been waiting for. Jake had finally completed his mission and was coming back to Charleston. They arranged to meet at the very cafe where their destinies had first intertwined. The day of their meeting arrived, and Emily could hardly contain her excitement. She chose a simple yet elegant dress, one that she hoped would match the image Jake had of her from the cafe. She arrived early, her nerves on edge, and found a quiet corner where she could see the entrance clearly. Every time the door opened, her heart skipped a beat. Meanwhile, Sophie, inspired by the love story of Emily and Jake, had decided to have a heart-to-heart conversation with her husband. She realized that avoiding the issues in their marriage was only making things worse. One evening, as they sat on their porch, she finally spoke up. "John, we need to talk," Sophie said, her voice trembling slightly. John looked up from his newspaper, concern etched on his face. "What's on your mind, Soph?" Sophie took a deep breath. "I feel like we've been drifting apart. I miss us, the way we used to be. We need to work on this, for us and for the kids." John nodded slowly. "You're right. I've been so consumed with work that I haven't been paying attention to what really matters. Let's fix this together." Their conversation marked the beginning of a new chapter in their marriage, one where they faced their problems head-on and worked together to rebuild their relationship. Back at the cafe, Emily's wait was finally over. The door opened, and Jake walked in, his uniform crisp and his eyes scanning the room until they landed on her. Time seemed to stand still as they locked eyes. Jake approached her table, and for a moment, they just stared at each other, taking in the reality of being face-to-face after so long. "Emily," Jake said softly, his voice filled with emotion. "Jake," Emily replied, her eyes glistening with tears of joy. "It's really you." They sat down, and the conversation flowed effortlessly. They talked about everything they had shared in their letters and more. The connection between them was undeniable, and the cafe buzzed with the energy of their reunion. Meanwhile, Tom, Jake's brother, was finding solace in his photography project. Documenting the lives of sailors and their families had given him a sense of purpose he had been missing. One day, as he was photographing a group of sailors returning home, he saw Jake among them. Capturing the moment Jake reunited with Emily gave Tom a profound sense of fulfillment. Tom approached Jake after the shoot. "Hey, little brother, you look happy," he said, a rare smile on his face. "I am, Tom. I really am," Jake replied, glancing at Emily, who was chatting with some of the other sailors. Tom nodded. "You know, photographing all these families has made me realize how important it is to fight for what we love. I've been struggling, but seeing you and Emily gives me hope." Jake put a hand on Tom's shoulder. "I'm glad to hear that. And remember, no matter how dark things get, there's always a way out. You just have to keep looking for the light." Tom smiled, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. For the first time in a long while, he felt more connected to his brother and more motivated to overcome his own struggles. As the evening wore on, Emily and Jake left the cafe, hand in hand, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Their love had grown stronger through their letters, and now, with each other by their side, they felt invincible. Sophie, too, was finding new strength in her relationship with John. They started going on dates again, rediscovering the joy of each other's company. The love story of Emily and Jake had inspired not just them, but those around them, to believe in the power of love and the importance of fighting for it. For Tom, the journey was far from over, but he was no longer fighting alone. With his camera in hand and his family by his side, he felt ready to face the challenges ahead. As the sun set over Charleston, Emily and Jake stood by the waterfront, watching the ships sail by. They knew there would be more letters, more separations, and more challenges, but they also knew that their love was strong enough to withstand it all. "Here's to us," Jake said, raising an imaginary glass. "To us," Emily echoed, smiling up at him. In that moment, surrounded by the beauty of Charleston and the promise of a future together, Emily and Jake knew that their love story was just beginning. The anticipation in Emily's heart reached its zenith as she stepped into the familiar confines of the cafe where everything had begun. The scent of freshly brewed coffee and the soft murmur of conversations created a backdrop for the moment she had been dreaming of for months. She glanced around, searching for the man whose words had captured her heart long before his face had. Then, there he was, Jake, standing by the counter, looking just as nervous and hopeful as she felt. As their eyes met, A wave of recognition and emotion washed over her. It was as if the months of letters, the intimate exchange of thoughts and feelings, had bridged the gap between them. Jake moved towards her with a tentative smile, the same one she had imagined countless times while reading his letters. "Emily," he greeted her softly, his voice carrying the warmth and affection that had filled his letters. "Jake," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The moment felt surreal, a collision of fantasy and reality. They sat down at a table near the window, the same one where Jake had first seen her all those months ago. The conversation flowed naturally, as if they were old friends catching up rather than two people meeting for the first time. They talked about the letters, the emotions behind them, and the journey that had led them to this moment. "I never imagined I'd actually find you," Jake confessed, his eyes reflecting the sincerity of his words. "Every letter I wrote, I hoped you'd feel the same way, but I never dared to dream this far." Emily smiled, feeling a deep connection with this man who had poured his heart out to her through ink and paper. "Your letters meant everything to me, Jake. They gave me hope and made me believe in love again." As they continued to talk, the world outside the cafe seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them in their own little universe. It was as if they had known each other forever, their souls intertwining through the words they had shared. Meanwhile, Sophie, inspired by the strength and determination Emily had shown in her pursuit of love, was beginning to rebuild her own marriage. She had confronted her husband with honesty and vulnerability, laying bare the issues that had been festering between them. Together, they had started the process of healing, finding new ways to connect and communicate. Watching Emily and Jake's love story unfold had reminded Sophie of the power of love and the importance of fighting for it. Tom, Jake's brother, had also found new purpose through his photography project. Documenting the lives of sailors and their families had given him a renewed sense of direction. He had captured poignant moments of love, sacrifice, and resilience, each photograph telling a story of its own. Through his lens, he had begun to see the world and himself in a new light. Inspired by Emily and Jake's connection, Tom decided to organize an exhibition of his photographs. The event would not only highlight the lives of the sailors, but also include the love story that had blossomed between Emily and Jake. It was a celebration of love in all its forms, a testament to the enduring bonds that connected people despite the challenges they faced. As the date of the exhibition approached, Emily and Jake continued to grow closer. They spent as much time together as possible, cherishing the moments they had before Jake's next mission. They knew that their love would be tested by distance and time, but they were determined to face it together. One evening, as they walked hand in hand along the waterfront, Jake turned to Emily with a serious expression. "I know my job makes things complicated, but I want you to know that I'm committed to us. No matter where I am, you'll always be in my heart." Emily squeezed his hand, feeling a surge of emotion. "I feel the same way, Jake. We'll make this work, no matter what." Their love was a beacon of hope, not just for them, but for those around them. Sophie and her husband were taking steps to rebuild their marriage, finding inspiration in Emily and Jake's unwavering commitment to each other. Tom, too, was finding joy and purpose in his work, capturing the beauty and strength of the human spirit through his photographs. The day of Tom's exhibition arrived, and the gallery was filled with people eager to see his work. The photographs were arranged thoughtfully, each one telling a story of love, sacrifice, and resilience. As guests moved through the gallery, they were drawn to a series of photographs that chronicled the love story between Emily and Jake. One photograph, in particular, stood out. It was a candid shot of Emily sitting by the window of the cafe, lost in thought. The image captured the essence of her longing and hope, a visual representation of the emotions that had been conveyed through the letters. As Emily stood before the photograph, she felt a hand on her shoulder. Turning, she saw Jake, his eyes filled with pride and love. "Tom did an amazing job," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "He did," Jake agreed, pulling her into a gentle embrace. "And so did you, Emily. Thank you for believing in us." In that moment, surrounded by the stories of love and resilience captured in Tom's photographs, Emily and Jake knew that their journey was just beginning. They had found each other against all odds, and they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead together. Emily and Jake faced a new array of challenges as they tried to navigate their budding relationship amidst the uncertainties of Jake's missions abroad. Despite the joy of finally meeting and the deepening bond they shared, the reality of Jake's life as a sailor loomed large. Each farewell was filled with a bittersweet mixture of hope and anxiety, as Emily tried to remain strong, knowing that Jake would soon be back on the open sea, facing unknown dangers. "Stay safe, Jake," Emily whispered, her voice trembling as she held onto him tightly at the Charleston port. The salty breeze whipped around them, mingling with the smell of the ocean and the cries of seagulls overhead. "I promise, Emily," Jake replied, his voice firm yet tender. "I'll come back to you. Always." He kissed her forehead gently, a gesture filled with unspoken promises and heartfelt commitments. Back home, Emily found solace in the steady stream of letters from Jake. Each one was a lifeline, filled with love and stories of his adventures. She poured her heart into her replies, her words a tether that kept them connected across the miles. The letters became their refuge, a place where they could share their dreams, fears, and unwavering love for each other. Meanwhile, Sophie and her husband, Mark, embarked on their journey to mend their fractured marriage. Inspired by Emily's courage and the love story she shared with Jake, Sophie initiated heartfelt conversations with Mark. They began to explore the roots of their issues, working diligently to rebuild trust and intimacy. "Mark, I miss us," Sophie confessed one evening, her voice soft and filled with vulnerability. "I miss the connection we used to have." Mark reached out, taking her hand in his. "I miss it too, sophomore. I want us to find our way back to each other, whatever it takes." Together, they sought therapy and engaged in activities that reignited their bond. They rediscovered the small joys of their relationship, learning to communicate more openly and honestly. Slowly, the wounds began to heal, and their relationship grew stronger than before. Tom, on the other hand, found a renewed sense of purpose through his photography project. With the unwavering support of Emily and Jake, he organized an exhibition showcasing the lives of sailors and their families. The event was a resounding success, with people moved by the raw, emotional narratives captured in his photos. "Thank you for believing in me," Tom said to Emily and Jake at the exhibition's closing night. His eyes glistened with gratitude and newfound confidence. "You're an incredible photographer, Tom," Emily replied, her voice filled with pride. "Your work is changing lives, including yours." Jake nodded in agreement. "We're proud of you, brother. This is just the beginning." As Tom's photos garnered acclaim, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment and connection to his work. The project not only helped him cope with his depression, but also bridged the emotional gap between him and his brother. The siblings grew closer, sharing stories and experiences that strengthened their bond. Despite the distance, Emily and Jake's love continued to flourish. They relied on technology to bridge the gaps between Jake's missions, sharing video calls and messages whenever possible. Each reunion was a celebration, filled with laughter, shared experiences, and a deepening understanding of one another. One evening, as they sat on Emily's porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Jake turned to her, his eyes reflecting the orange and pink hues of the setting sun. "Emily, I've been thinking," he began, his tone serious yet hopeful. "What if we planned for a future together? I know it's not easy with my job, but I can't imagine my life without you." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had longed for this conversation, dreaming of a future where they could build a life together despite the challenges. "I want that too, Jake," she replied, her voice filled with emotion. "We'll find a way to make it work, no matter what." Their decision to face the future together brought a sense of hope and determination. They began to discuss plans for when Jake would be back for longer periods, envisioning a life where they could share a home and create lasting memories. As months passed, Sophie and Mark's relationship continued to strengthen. They celebrated small victories, like cooking dinner together or taking evening walks, cherishing the renewed connection they had fought hard to achieve. Tom, buoyed by the success of his exhibition, started working on new photographic projects. His confidence grew, and he felt more connected to his family and his work than ever before. The once dark shadows of depression began to lift, replaced by a sense of purpose and fulfillment. Through the trials and triumphs, Emily, Jake, Sophie, and Tom discovered the power of love, resilience, and the importance of supporting one another. Their intertwined lives created a tapestry of hope and strength, proving that even in the face of uncertainty, love could prevail. Emily and Jake's relationship had blossomed through the ink of heartfelt letters, and now they were ready to take one of the most significant steps in their journey together. After numerous discussions and shared dreams, they decided to move in together, blending their lives into a shared tapestry of love, hope, and mutual support. Emily, standing in the middle of her cozy living room, glanced around at the familiar surroundings. "I can't believe we're really doing this," she said, her voice carrying a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Jake, who had just entered with a box labeled books, smiled at her. "It's a big step, but it's the right one. I want us to build a life together, Emily. A real, tangible one." Their decision to live together was not just a logistical move, but a testament to their commitment to each other, despite the challenges Jake's career posed. They spent days carefully packing Emily's belongings, each item a piece of her world that she was now ready to share with Jake. Meanwhile, Sophie and her husband, Mark, were also navigating significant changes. Inspired by Emily and Jake's unwavering love and determination, Sophie and Mark had decided to renew their vows, symbolizing a fresh start in their marriage. The ceremony was a beautiful, intimate affair held in a small chapel adorned with flowers and soft candlelight. As they stood at the altar, Mark took Sophie's hands in his, looking into her eyes with sincerity. "Sophie, these past years have been a journey. We've had our ups and downs, but through it all, my love for you has only grown stronger. Today, I promise to continue working on us, to cherish and respect you, and to always strive for the best in our relationship." Sophie's eyes glistened with tears of joy and gratitude. "Mark, I've learned so much about love and resilience from you. Today, I vow to be the partner you deserve, to support you, and to always find our way back to each other, no matter what challenges we face." Their renewed vows marked a new chapter in their lives, filled with hope and a deeper understanding of each other. At the same time, Tom, who had been battling his own demons, found a renewed sense of purpose. With Emily and Jake's encouragement and the success of his photographic exhibition, he felt more connected to his craft and his family. The exhibition had been a triumph, showcasing the poignant and often overlooked lives of sailors and their families. "Your work is incredible, Tom," Emily had said during the exhibition's opening night. "You've captured something truly special." Tom had smiled, a genuine smile that had been rare in the past. "Thank you, Emily. It means a lot coming from you. You and Jake have been such an inspiration." Now, with newfound confidence, Tom was diving into new projects, each one more ambitious and creatively fulfilling than the last. His journey through depression had been arduous, but he was emerging stronger, with a clearer vision of his future and a deeper connection to his art. One evening, as Emily and Jake sat together in their new home, surrounded by unpacked boxes and the comforting hum of domestic life, they reflected on how far they'd come. "Do you ever think about how all of this started?" Emily asked, leaning against Jake's shoulder. Jake chuckled softly. "You mean the letters? All the time. It's amazing how a few words on paper brought us here." Emily smiled, tracing patterns on his hand with her fingers. "It feels like fate, doesn't it?" "It does," Jake agreed. "But it also feels like a lot of hard work, patience, and love. And I wouldn't trade it for anything." Their conversation was a testament to the deep bond they had formed, a bond that had been tested and strengthened over time. They knew that the road ahead would not always be easy, especially with Jake's unpredictable deployments, but they were ready to face whatever came their way together. As Emily continued to make their house a home, she found solace in the small, everyday moments they shared, cooking dinner together, late-night talks, and simply being in each other's presence. These moments were the threads that wove their lives into a beautiful, shared existence. Sophie and Mark, now more in tune with each other than ever, often visited Emily and Jake, their friendship a source of joy and support for all of them. They would sit around the dinner table, sharing stories, laughter, and the occasional tear, their bonds deepening with each passing day. Tom, too, was a frequent visitor, bringing with him tales of his latest photographic adventures and the occasional new piece of art to adorn Emily and Jake's walls. His transformation was nothing short of remarkable, and he often credited Emily and Jake for the inspiration they had provided. One evening, as they all gathered in Emily and Jake's living room, Tom raised a glass. To love, resilience, and the unexpected ways life brings us together, he toasted. To family and friends, Mark added, raising his glass. And to the future, Sophie said, her eyes sparkling with hope. Emily and Jake exchanged a glance, their hearts full. To the future, they echoed, knowing that whatever it held, they would face it together, surrounded by the love and support of those who mattered most. The day of Emily's grand art exhibition had finally arrived, and the air was thick with anticipation and excitement. Charleston had never seen such a buzz around a local artist's debut. The gallery was adorned with Emily's captivating paintings, each piece telling a story of love, mystery, and passion inspired by the anonymous letters she had received over the past year. The centerpiece of the exhibition was shrouded in a delicate veil, waiting for the right moment to be unveiled. Emily stood by the entrance, her heart pounding with a mixture of pride and nerves. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, her hair flowing in soft waves. Sophie, her best friend, was by her side, offering words of encouragement. "Emily, this is your night. You deserve every bit of admiration coming your way," Sophie said, squeezing her hand. "Thank you, Sophie. I just hope Jake can make it in time," Emily replied, glancing at her phone for any messages from him. As the gallery began to fill with guests, Emily's eyes scanned the room, hoping to catch a glimpse of Jake. Their relationship had blossomed through the exchange of letters, and the physical distance had only made their bond stronger. However, the uncertainty of his missions always loomed over them like a dark cloud. Suddenly, Emily's phone buzzed. It was a message from Jake. "Emergency mission. I have to leave immediately. I'm so sorry, my love. I wish I could be there with you tonight. Always yours, Jake." Emily's heart sank. She had been looking forward to sharing this moment with him. Sophie noticed the change in her friend's demeanor. "What's wrong, Emily?" "Jake has been called away on an emergency mission. He won't be able to make it tonight," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. Sophie pulled her into a comforting hug. "He'll be back, Emily. He always comes back to you." As the evening progressed, Emily tried to focus on the guests, answering questions about her art and accepting compliments graciously. But her mind kept drifting back to Jake. The time came to unveil the centerpiece of her exhibition. She took a deep breath and stepped towards the veiled artwork. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. This piece is very special to me. It represents a journey of love and discovery, inspired by the most beautiful letters I've ever received," Emily began, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. She pulled away the veil to reveal a large canvas filled with intricate, swirling patterns of deep blues and vibrant reds, symbolizing the ocean and the passion that had grown between her and Jake. The crowd erupted in applause, but just as Emily was about to step back, a voice called out, "Emily, wait." She turned to see Jake standing at the entrance, still in his uniform, his eyes locked on hers. The room fell silent as he walked towards her, each step filled with purpose and determination. "Jake, how did you?" Emily's voice trailed off, overwhelmed with emotion. "I couldn't stay away. I had to be here with you," Jake said, taking her hands in his. "There's something I need to tell you, something I discovered recently that changes everything." Emily looked at him, confused but intrigued. "What is it, Jake?" Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, weathered diary. "I found this in my grandfather's house. It belonged to his father, a sailor like me. When I started reading it, I found entries about a woman he loved deeply, a woman named Emily who lived in Charleston. The descriptions, the emotions, they felt so familiar. I realized that our love story was written long before we were even born." Emily took the diary, her fingers tracing the edges of the worn leather cover. She opened it to a random page and began to read. The words were like echoes from another time, yet they resonated with her own experiences. Tears filled her eyes as she looked up at Jake. "Do you believe in destiny, Emily?" Jake asked, his voice gentle but firm. "I do now," she replied, her voice choked with emotion. "It's like our souls have been connected for generations." Jake smiled, brushing a tear from her cheek. "I promised myself that I would always come back to you, just like my great-grandfather did for his Emily. We are meant to be together, no matter what." The crowd watched in awe, captivated by the unfolding story. Sophie wiped away a tear, feeling the profound impact of the moment. Tom, who had been documenting the event through his lens, lowered his camera, deeply moved by the revelation. Emily and Jake embraced, their love and connection palpable to everyone present. The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing through the gallery and beyond. As the night drew to a close, Emily and Jake stood side by side, greeting well-wishers and sharing their incredible story. The exhibition had become more than just an art show. It was a celebration of love, destiny, and the unbreakable bonds that connect us all. "What's next for you, Jake?" Emily asked as they finally found a quiet moment together. "Whatever comes our way, we'll face it together," Jake replied, his eyes filled with unwavering commitment. "Our love has stood the test of time, and it will continue to do so." Emily nodded, feeling a sense of peace and certainty she had never known before. "Together," she echoed, knowing that no matter where life took them, they would always find their way back to each other.